Good morning, Bearfax community. Just a little bit of housekeeping. At the Bearfax podcast on Instagram and also the Bearfax podcast on Facebook. And please have a look at our YouTube channel, The Bearfax with Ross Pollard, so you can now watch our extraordinary guests. I'm in Melbourne, but we're talking to someone in New Hampshire, and my ignorance has just been reduced a little bit. We're not far from Boston, and we're 4 hours north of New York. Jeremy Woodward, welcome to the Bearfax.
Thank you so much for having me on your show today. It is a complete honor to be here. I've been listening to your show now just recently, and I absolutely love the show. So this is a total honor to be on here. I appreciate it.
We're really glad to have you here. Bit of housekeeping for you. Where did you grow up, Jeremy?
I grew up here in New Hampshire. I was born and raised in the capital city here. We love it. We have no plans on going anywhere else.
Terrific. So tell me about, let's get to you being extraordinary. So tell me about what sort of work you were doing up until recently. And I want you to tell me what happened in regards to that very important organ of yours, your heart.
Yeah, so I was born with a congenital heart defect. I was born with a bicuspid aortic heart valve. So basically, your aortic valve should have 3 little flaps or cusps to help facilitate blood flow through the body. And I was only born with 2 of them. So it's actually quite common, more common than I knew, and more common than you would think. But for most of us, most people, you don't ever have any issues. There's no problems. You live a healthy life, and that's it. For me, when I was approximately 22 years old, I became symptomatic. I didn't know what was going on. I had all these black and blues all over my body. I felt very achy for a long period of time. I just felt off for a while. So I ended up going in to see my doctor, and he did a quick echo of the heart, did some other tests, and then we quickly realized that I had an abscess growing on the aortic valve. Now, for most people, this may not ever occur, but for me, because the heart and the valve was already weakened by just having a bicuspid, it resulted in me ended up having to have my first open heart surgery. Although it was an emergency situation, it was pretty dire at the time. It was in a very controlled setting, if you know what I mean, because we went in there, they set up a plan. All right, we're going to come in, we're going to give you some antibiotics. We're going to treat you through a port through your neck that's going to go directly into your heart. And if this doesn't work, then, the end result will be an open heart surgery. So we went in, they tried to treat it with antibiotics. It didn't work. The doctors were not surprised that it didn't work, but it was one of those things that they were like, all right, we're going to give it a try and see if we can do it. So I had my first open heart surgery. Prior to the surgery, they gave me an option. They said, you can either have a mechanical valve implanted, or you can have, you'll get another tissue valve. Well, the mechanical valve comes with some, high risks. It also, results in you having to be on Coumadin or a blood thinner for the rest of your life. And at that time, I was 22 years old. I was competing a lot in martial arts, just doing a lot of active outdoor stuff. I was like, no way. I feel invincible. I'm doing this. I'm going to live forever. Let's just do the tissue valve. And they said, okay, well, the tissue valve will only give you 7 to 15 years. And I was like, I'm going to take my chances. So we got the tissue valve implanted, and then approximately almost 7 years to the day, I began going, I became symptomatic again. This time, though, the symptoms were very different. So we had gone into the hospital. We actually went into multiple hospitals trying to figure out what was going wrong. In fact, so much so that one of the hospitals that we went into, they started prepping me because they said, your organs are failing, and we have, determined that we need to do an immediate surgery to repair or take out your liver, all this stuff. So we're like, okay. And then at the very, very last second, they canceled that surgery. And we didn't know why, but they just said, we're not doing it. Come back in 2 weeks and we'll see from there. So my wife and I, we did not like that answer. We got home that night. My wife said the next morning, she said, we're getting in the car and we're driving to Boston. So we drove to Boston that morning and called the emergency room at Tufts Medical Center. At the time, it was New England Medical Center, but we called Tufts and said, we're on our way. Here are the symptoms. Where do we go? Tell us what to do. We get there, and that is when life completely changed forever.
So, Jeremy, just to stop you there, just for our listeners, so the heart is quite an exquisite thing, isn't it? It beats
oh, yes, it is.
From when we are conceived to when we go into the ground. 4 chambers of the pump, and the chamber that you're talking about, every time the heart does one of its beats or pumps, 3 valves for most people open, and blood gets pumped out into your aorta, as you've said, which is the pump that basically pumps the blood all around to your body to keep you alive. But you don't have 3 valves, you have 2. So there's, I don't know, for the plumbers out there, we could potentially have backflow, couldn't we? We could not be quite efficient. So just on that, I just wanted to clarify that for the listeners. So you said you've headed down to Boston. Without sounding crass, cardiologists like to live in nice areas. I believe there's lots of money in Boston. So
yes,
follow the money trail, go to the best cardiac hospital.
Absolutely. And so my wife had preemptively done a little bit of research, and we had determined that there was an amazing surgeon. I mean, there are amazing surgeons at all of the Boston hospitals, but given my situation, we saw that this surgeon was at this particular hospital, and she said, we're going to take a chance. We arrived at the hospital. They immediately got us in. I mean, the hardest part about it was basically the walk from my car to the examination room, because I couldn't walk. I had put on about 40 pounds, in which I'll get to a little bit later on as to why that was. But I could not get into, I literally had to get pushed in a wheelchair.
So what are you experiencing? What's happening? Are you short of breath? Have you got pain? What's going on? Why can't you?
I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs. I couldn't walk 30 feet without having to stop. And I mean, for me, I'm a very active individual. So that was tough for me to grasp. And then, just dizziness. I couldn't lay down. I mean, I had to sleep sitting up every night. When I could sleep, I mean, it was broken sleep for weeks, almost a month and a half.
You're going into failure, aren't you? You're going into heart failure, yes?
That's exactly right. That is so again, exactly
for the
right.
Listeners, the blood is backflowing, and if blood backflows far enough, it can start going into your lungs, can't it?
That's right. And that's exactly what was going on. And we got into the exam room, and one of the head cardiac doctors comes in, and he did not even have to touch or anything. He just looked at my neck and he could see the pulses. And he said, hang on a second, I'll be right back. And he comes in a couple minutes later. He's got a whole team of doctors now. There must have been 6 or 7 of them. And he looks at me and he said, we're going to tell you right now. He's like, I don't know how you've made it this far. If you didn't come in, you probably have less than 24 to 48 hours to live. We are immediately putting you on a heart transplant list, and you're not leaving this hospital. And he's like, we're going to be totally honest. You may not ever leave this hospital again. You are in that bad a shape.
So you feel kind of reassured you're in the right facility, but it's almost like that episode out of Seinfeld where the doctor says to George, I've never seen that before.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That's
so
correct.
Excuse my language, your pump's fucked, isn't it? Your heart's fucked.
It is a complete mess. We don't, my wife and I, we are very reassured that we are in one of the greatest places that we could be in right now. But also now, being told that we're being put on a heart transplant list. But if I were to go into cardiac arrest, they've already told me, they're like, you're in such bad shape, we won't be able to save you. So we have to hope and pray right now that over the next week or 2 that we can get you on diuretics, diurese you, get all of this fluid off of you. Because normally I'm 180 pounds.
Which is how much is that in kilos?
Great question. Great question. Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not
All right.
sure.
Well, our listeners can look that up. But so do you have kids at this stage?
No, we did not.
All right. So how old are you
We
when this
were
is happening?
the second time around, I was 29 years old. My wife and I had just been married approximately 2 years prior. So we had been thinking about starting a family, and I just started a new business and all this stuff. And it was quite a bit to be thrown at us,
What was your
in a
business,
very short
Jeremy?
period of time.
What was your business that you just started?
I had gone from the construction business into starting my own fitness studio.
Okay.
So I had picked up clients, I had built up a client base, and then as quickly as I built this client base up, I had to go call every one of them and say, hey, I'm done. I'm taking a leave of absence. I don't know when I'm coming back. So that was hard. It was hard because, I worked really, really hard for several months to build up this client base. And, it was a tough one.
So let's go to the psychological side now. How are you and your wife feeling? You're in hospital thinking, I might never get out of here. You're 29. You're an active person. That's the last thing an active male, female wants to be told. What are you feeling? What are the conversations you're having with your wife?
So I'm a very positive and optimistic person. And I told myself, because I knew on the drive down to Boston, it's normally a 60-minute drive for us, but it was on a Monday or a Tuesday morning. I think it took us close to 2.5, 3 hours to get there with traffic and everything. I had a lot of time to think about these things. And I said to myself, I said, you know what, no matter how I'm feeling, I have to portray that everything is going to be okay, because I knew that we were going to get some bad news, and I knew that my wife would be absolutely devastated. So I had to, at that point, just say, you know what, no matter what, I am going to leave it in God's hands here, and whatever happens, happens. But I have to be the strong one. I cannot show, I hate to say it. I was, saying I can't show weakness. I don't want to show weakness. I can't at this point. We need to be able to get through this.
So
and
you're
I'm
being strong for your wife.
100%. I had to be because I knew that when the doctor left and he told us, my wife and I, we had a couple minutes after they came in and told us that we were in heart failure and that we were being put on a transplant list, that she broke down. And I was like, hey, look, we're going to be okay. I'm going to get through this. We're going to figure it out no matter what. And I had to be that person. It was just, and it is my nature, even to this day, even though things internally may eat me up and rip me apart, I have to be that outwardly strong. Okay, we're going to figure this out. That's me by nature.
So what happens? Do you get we're talking. So tell me what happened.
Yeah. So, the plan was at that point, as soon as, it was so funny because me being super naive too with things, I said to the doctor, I said, look, is this like is this an outward patient thing? Like, can I come back tomorrow? Or do I need to stay here? Because I did not want to stay in the hospital. And he reiterated back to me again. He said, look, he's like, if you leave this hospital, I can guarantee you're not coming back alive. So he's like, you're in here until you leave here. So my goal at that point was, okay, I am leaving this hospital. So we immediately went on a therapy of diuretics. And basically for the next 1 week or so, I had to pee out as much fluid as possible. I had to get this fluid off.
Diuretics basically get rid of the excess fluid, don't they?
That is correct. Now, it wreaks havoc on your body internally. It can. And
Stuffs
for
up
me,
your
I was
electrolytes and whatnot.
Yes. Yep. And at that point too, as soon I can tell you for weeks I hadn't eaten anything. So if you can imagine, I'm normally 180, I balloon up to about 220, 225 pounds, and I haven't eaten anything. So you're wondering like, what's happening? But it's the backflow. It's the water retention. It is everything that's going on. But that first night in the hospital, I was able to eat. And I knew, I was like, okay, I felt good at that point. They've got me on every drug possible. I'm peeing like crazy. And I can tell every single day my body's changing. I'm coming down. I'm losing some of the fluid. I literally could look down and I couldn't see my feet down because my stomach was so out there. I would put on a pair of sweatpants, and those sweatpants would look like cycling tights on me. That's how big my legs became. And then when I started, it got to the point where it was becoming so incredibly painful, because the skin was being stretched. Things I never, ever in a million years thought that I would ever experience. And it was incredibly painful. But I knew that I was in the best place in the world for that particular surgery. And then we did have a surgery scheduled. The doctor had to cancel it. He didn't feel that I was still at a point. So he's like, you got a ways to go before we can get this. And we did everything possible. And finally,
are you waiting for a heart?
Nope. I was on the list in case, but fortunately the plan was the surgeon was going to get in there, go into the aortic valve. If we needed to replace the heart, one would be on standby. So when they did it, they knew that there was one that had come in, that I would be on standby. If they had to put me back together to wait a couple of days, whatever it might be, I was on standby in that event. But fortunately, though, because I was healthy and because I was fit prior, I had a very strong heart. I had a very strong beating heart. It kept me alive. All they had to do was put a mechanical heart valve in. They had to fix my aorta. Had some damage to it. They had to repair. They had to put some mesh and do some things in the aorta. So I was very, very fortunate. Now, upon coming out of surgery, I had a collapsed lung, which was incredibly painful. I didn't experience that the first time, but apparently it's quite common in heart surgeries and open heart surgeries. And so it was quite an experience. And
Jeremy, your screen's just shaking a bit. I don't know whether it's because you're leaning on the desk. I just want.
Oh yes, it is. Sorry
mate.
about that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, how long was the surgery?
Surgery was approximately 6 hours, but because the lung collapsed, it extended it out to about 8 or 8.5 hours because they had to go back in and they had to take care of that. So,
all right. So, tell me about. I've read and watched that anyone that has their heart tinkered with, it can be a very invasive feeling, and there can be psychological issues afterwards. Is that true?
Yes.
And did you experience that?
Oh, 100%. Now, fortunately, I had already experienced this the first time, and I knew what to expect.
So what is it? Tell us what it is.
All right. So when you're in the hospital, you're surrounded by a million sounds that deafens your heart beating, right? You've got this machine beeping, you've got your blood pressure, you've got all these things going on around you that you are kind of, it's all blocked out. When I got home and the TV got turned off and my wife and I are about to fall asleep, all I can hear is tick, 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 my heart beating.
Wow.
And then you start thinking like, oh my gosh, I can hear my heart beating. What if it stops? Or what if it flutters? Am I going to have to go through this? Because post-op, for a period of time, your heart is swollen. And, you're still at risk of various issues occurring. So that is constantly playing, it's playing games with you, thinking like, okay, am I going to get through tonight? Am I going to get through today? Should I go for a walk? Can I? Because now my heart's going to beat fast. Is it going to be able to sustain it? All these things go through your mind, and
so
it's quite scary.
Sorry to interrupt. Is there a sensation of mortality?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because you just think like, I've made it through supposedly the most difficult part of it, right? The surgery, the post-op, all of that stuff. But now I'm listening to it, and is it just going to stop? Now, with a mechanical heartbeat, with a mechanical heart valve, you hear your heartbeat. I mean, like if I put my chest up real close to the screen, I've got some sounds going on right now that you wouldn't be able to, but you can hear it. My daughters, when all three of them were born, for a period of time, they would always fall asleep. They'd put their ear right up against my chest, and my heart would literally put them asleep. It was really quite cool.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really
okay.
neat.
I just want to stick with this part. So you've gone from being this martial arts person, highly fit, starting a gym, you're being strong for your wife, you've seemingly got over the hardest part, but now you've got this space in between your ears. Did you have moments where you were vulnerable and upset or by yourself where you just wanted to just fall apart after everything that had happened?
Yes, because for such a long period of time during the whole process of going through heart failure and being sick and everything, I had to hold it together. I had to be the strong one. I had to show that nothing's going to be like, I'm not going to lose to this. And then I did have moments of like, that's it. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. It was, I'm long past that now, but for a period of time afterwards, I mean, I had never had a panic attack in my life. And then one day I was out and I was in the car or something. I heard something and it just triggered me. And I immediately went into a panic attack. Of course, I drove myself over to our nearest emergency room. I walk in there and I said, look, I've had this heart surgery. I've had heart surgeries. I have a valve replacement. I don't know if I'm having a heart attack, whatever it might be. Of course, they get me in there and they get checked out. And they're like, no, everything's all good. Panic attack. And I was like, oh, okay. But that was probably one of the most scary points for me because I thought at that point, I was like, yeah, this is it. The valve has failed and this is it.
All right. What have we done? What have we done to say, you know what, fuck this. I'm not letting this defeat me. What have we done? Tell me, I want to know about your organization, your exercise regime. Please, the viewers want to know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the night before my second open heart surgery, I needed a distraction. Okay, my wife was downstairs grabbing some dinner. I'm upstairs, in the room, and I'm like, okay, I need this distraction. A friend of mine had brought in a triathlete magazine. I'm reading through the triathlete magazine. I was like, okay, I needed the hardest thing that I could possibly imagine at that time to obtain. I needed something to become obsessed with. And I saw triathlon. I saw the Ironman triathlon. And within the time of my wife leaving the room, going downstairs to get some dinner and coming back up, I had already determined that I'm going to live. I'm going to make it through this heart surgery. And I am going to do the Ironman triathlon. She comes back. I share it with her. She's like, you're absolutely nuts. Okay, so for the listeners out there that don't know what an Ironman is, it consists of a 2.4-mile swim. Then you go on to a 112-mile bike ride, and then you finish with a marathon, 26.2 miles. And that to me at that moment while I was sitting in the hospital bed seemed so far out of reach. But I was like, I'm going to do this because I am going to show myself that I can do anything, that anything can be accomplished. So immediately the day after my surgery, my training literally started in the ICU. I started with one lap around the ICU. It's all I could do. I was hooked up to 1 million wires. The next day, half the wires came out of my body. I'm doing 2 laps around and then 3 laps. I had some complications post-op. So my body, because I went on warfarin, I had to go on Coumadin warfarin, which is a blood thinner. My body just was not.
Also a rat poison, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. I just had this conversation with a doctor this morning. I had seen her post something about it. And we were trading some messages back and forth on Instagram. But it's scary, but there are really no other options out there. Although right now, my wife and we are trying to explore some different, some ways to manage it and stuff, so I can eventually get off of that. Yeah, so I said, this is what I'm going to do. And then, I started with the 1 lap, 2 laps, 3 laps around the ICU. And then 2 weeks later, which was many laps around the ICU, I got out. I started with 30-minute walks around the house. And 3 years later, it led me to the finish line of Ironman Lake Placid in New York. And it was that point right there was one of the, I was like, this is one of the coolest things I've ever done. And
were you and your wife and supporters dehydrated from crying on the finish line? Because that's given me goosebumps just to think about that.
I left it when they say leave it all out there. Oh, I left it all out there. I had nothing left. I waited till it was about another day before it really hit me like, wow, I just did this.
What do you say? What do they announce, mate? What do they announce when you cross the finish line? at every Ironman?
I have to pull up the video. I do have the video saved somewhere, and I think it was congratulations, Jeremy Woodward, you are an Ironman.
Yeah.
As I came through, and the girls, I'm sorry, my wife and my youngest, who was 2 at the time, they were there. It was a late night, but it was one of the coolest things and experiences I've ever
What time
gone
did you
through in my
do?
life. I finished just before 11 p.m., which was 15 hours and change.
Good man.
It was 15:30 or something. So,
because you tick past midnight, and unfortunately it doesn't qualify. Is that right?
you have 17 hours. So I made it by an hour and 10 minutes or so. It's a hard course. Lake Placid, New York is a very, very hilly bike. But hey, my goal, I had no goal other than to just cross that finish line. That is all I wanted to do. And I did it. And it's one of the coolest things I've ever experienced.
What are you thinking during the race? Because you got a long time. As I'll just convert it for Australians, it's a 3.8 kilometer swim. I think it's ride here. It's well over 200 Ks, I think. And then, yeah, as you say, marathon. What are you thinking as you're doing it? Are there any moments where you think, oh, no, I'm out?
I didn't have any of those moments of I'm out, I can't do this. The things that went through my head were, wow, I can do this. I just survived the worst of heart failure. I've survived 2 major open heart surgeries. And I am about to cross the finish line of one of the world's toughest single day events. If I can do this, what else can I do? Like, there's nothing that I can't do.
All right,
and
well,
I've
what else have you
done? So I've gone on, I've run, I think we are about to cross over 300 races since my last heart surgery. This year I'll cross over 300 races. And that's, between
different
5Ks
distances.
Yeah, everything from 5K all the way up to Ironman. I've had the opportunity, and I've been very fortunate enough to run the Boston Marathon 6 times. I've been able to run through charity through Teddy Bruschi's team, Teddy is a football player here with the New England Patriots, or was a football player with the New England Patriots. He had a stroke. So because of his stroke and my heart connection, I was able to, represent his team. So I've been able to run the Boston Marathon 6 times, run New York, and just some really, really neat opportunities. I had the opportunity to share my story through a TEDx talk. I wrote a book about the whole series, about the whole process. And this fall, I'm not sure if you saw it on my Instagram the other day, but we just announced that there's a group that's going to be here in the fall doing a documentary on my heart history and story. So that will come out in January or February of 2024.
Where can people see that on? What streaming channel, or what channel is that on? Who is it with?
It'll be through YouTube. We're also, right now, there's a couple of other networks that have expressed some interest. So when we're able to say and give further details on that, I'll be able to. But we're going to do our reels. We're going to do everything that we can, as much as we can, through Instagram and through YouTube.
Tell me about the cause that you started and the business that you're running.
Yeah, so I have, like I said before, I've had the opportunity to run for Teddy's team. It's been a very, very important part of my life over the last several years. I think we've raised close to $80,000 for stroke and heart disease prevention. I started a fitness business it was the year that I had my second open heart surgery, moved into a brand new studio 11 years ago. We are, we were able to train clients one-on-one, personal training, group classes. We've launched an online program, which is taken off. It's been amazing, especially since COVID. It was just something that we put in place because we're like, we need to COVID proof ourselves so that if we ever do experience anything like this again, we have, this is our backup plan. We can migrate.
I need you to unashamedly plug these and give some addresses and some tags or whatever, because people need to look these up. Can you tell me what your Instagram is, and can you also tell me where people can find your business, your online business, please?
Yeah, so my Instagram and pretty much across all social platforms is at ironheartjeremy. My website is livelifetothefittest.com. We trademarked that several years ago just to have it. And we're like, okay, we'll see what we do with it. And all of a sudden, it's been really cool to see where it's grown into. We have people across the United States that are on there working out, doing programs. So it's been a really neat evolution the last couple of years. COVID was tough, forced us to pivot, but it's all coming out in the right direction right now.
Jeremy, I'll make sure that all your businesses and all your links are in the show notes, and we'll make sure that we'll put them on Instagram and Facebook. I don't mean to upset you, but can you tell me about your 3 beautiful children?
They are amazing. I have a 14-year-old. Her name is Eliana. My middle daughter is Bryn. She's 11 years old, and my youngest daughter is Isla, and she's 6 years old. They are amazing. They're all very unique in their own way. They're all little dancers. They dance for my mother. My mother's had a dance school here in our town for over 50 plus years now, and the girls have the opportunity to dance with her, and they're very much a part of that. They're very much a part of everything we do as a family here, in my studio, in racing, and they're the next leaders. I mean, they're gonna carry all of this on when I can't. So it's pretty special. They're amazing girls, and it'll be awesome too, because this fall, having them be a part of the documentary, which they're super excited about, because they're like, are we going to do like a red carpet? Like, they're asking all these like really fun stuff, right? But they will have the opportunity to see me cross the finish line at Ironman. And they see my wife and I, we do races and all that stuff around here. They're going to see me do something really hard. They're going to see their dad struggle, but they're also going to see the end result of hard work, what it means, and an end result of crossing that finish line. And I hope that carries with them forever.
So just a couple of points. They say you haven't lived until you've had 3 daughters.
True.
And they're getting to the age, I'm assuming, that you have a man shed, or you, because of the bathroom situation, you shower under a hose outside.
That is true. That is why I have my own studio here, which I'm doing this interview from right now. And our home is less than a mile away. So when I need to come over here, this is where I come to escape for a little bit. And it's funny because they know
or something that you can retreat with.
No, we have a female dog. It's awesome. Her name's Luna. She's the best. She's a little Yorkie. She's 9.5 pounds of just pure. She's awesome. She's a great addition to our family.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
So this race that your daughters are going to witness you do, is it the Lake Placid one again?
No, it's going to be Ironman Arizona. It'll be in Tempe.
That sounds hot.
November. Well, normally throughout the year, yes, it is. But November is a beautiful time of year. I've been out there a few other times for some other events and things that we've done. So Tempe is a beautiful place in September. It's typically in the low to mid 70s. The water is actually quite cold. It'll be, in the low to mid 60s or so. So I'll be wearing a wetsuit. It's a beautiful course. Oh my gosh, it's spectacular. And the people are amazing out there.
So it's actually more like a festival or a carnival.
Absolutely. Now, I would have no desire to be out there this time of year because it is pretty hot. I have some friends that live out there, and it's rough, but it's an amazing place. So we'll be out there.
Is Hawaii a possibility for you, the Hawaiian Ironman?
It is only under the opportunity of legacy. And you have to do 12 Iron. I think it's, as of right now, I believe it's 12 Ironmans, and then you get that slot for the following year. That would be the only thing. And my goal is, by the time I'm 55 years old, to get that legacy slot. So I have 10 years left to get a bunch more Ironmans under my belt. So.
So how do you live your life? Tell me how you get up in the morning. What can you share with our listeners? So you've been through a shithouse time. What would you say to someone who wakes up and the day's not going to go well, or they're feeling a bit down? What sort of things, what routine do you go through in the morning? What do you say to yourself to get yourself up and going?
First thing I do when I wake up is gratitude. I have a gratitude journal. I write down things I'm grateful for, people that are important in my life, people that have just come into my life, send them a message, send them just something to acknowledge, because, like the other day I put on the new social platform, I put on the threads, I put on there, you woke up today, you've already won the day, right? I mean, think about that. Like, you may wake up and you might have, you may have those thoughts of, am I going to accomplish this? Or, does my life stink? Or you woke up, you won. It's huge, like the power of that. And I had a few friends that saw that on threads, and they messaged me back and they're like, I never thought about it like that, but I am going to think about my life every single day. When I wake up, I've won the day already. So if I've already won the day by waking up, what else, I can accomplish anything today. Going back to what do I do every single day, when I just typically, waking up, like I said, my gratitude, have a glass of water. I tried to get my workouts in as early as possible. On the weekends, it's easy. During the weekdays, it's a little bit more challenging because I do have clients early in the morning. But I try to have the water, sit down, visualize. I think about, how I'm going to take on the day. What am I going to do? And how am I going to leave a positive impact? And what does that look like? Are
you familiar with Joe Dispenza?
Yes. Oh, yes. And I know you talk about him quite a bit on your show. Yes.
Well, I'm interested to get your input. Do you believe, as he talks, that if you put out positive vibes, positive thoughts, you will receive positive things?
I 110% believe that.
Yeah.
I think what you put in the universe, what you put out in the universe is what you get. Now, I will tell you, during COVID, during that period of time, because so much changed with our business and life and friendships and stuff. And I can tell you, I didn't put out good vibes. I was, excuse me for my language, but I was pissed. Like, why is this going on? Why so many changes, so many things? And I just put this vibe out there, and I had to do some really, really deep, I had to do a real deep dive on my own introspective of, like, why I can't be like this. Why am I putting it out like this? But I cannot be like this. So for me, it's like, okay, you got to put the good vibes out there. We've had some very challenging days over the past few months. And as challenging, as those days may be, like, do something good for somebody. Pay for their coffee at Starbucks. Go over and have a conversation in the grocery store. My wife hates going to the grocery store. I love going to the grocery store because I love to just go and talk to people. Like a random person. I mean, we live in a small city, so you see a lot of the same people where you are, right? But I'll go and I'll have these conversations with people. It's just, you put out because you never know what might be going on in their life. They may have had a really shitty day, and that one conversation that you had with somebody could change everything. And it comes back to putting out the good vibes, putting it out in the universe. It's very important to me. And it goes back to, like, I'm in that, in general, I'm a very optimistic and very, positive person.
You are actually, you're extraordinary, Jeremy. You really are. And I think you're a credit to your family. I think your daughters must be so proud to have a father like you. Thank you so much for joining our show today. You are a shining example of, no matter what's thrown at you, you've dealt with it and you've done the most positive things out of it. And we here at the show wish you a very healthy, happy, long, and inspirational life. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeremy.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It has been a pleasure, and what you are doing is amazing. And I can't thank you enough for this.
Thank you, Jeremy.